This program is brought to you by Emory University.
Hello everyone, and welcome inside the studio at Goizueta Business School. My name is J. Michael Moore and I work in the school's marketing and communications office. I'm joined by two of our MBA students today, both of whom are veterans of the United States Army, and I'm sure many of you out there are either veterans or active duty members of the armed services yourself. I'd first like to begin first and foremost by thanking you for your service and really appreciate you taking the time to learn more about our program and some of the unique things that it brings to men and women who are leaving the military and looking to extend their career with Masters of Business Administration. As we get started, I want to allow these young gentlemen to introduce themselves, and I'll set a few ground rules, not many. We will have slides on the screen. We'll go through and talk a few things about the program, and then feel free to ask your questions. We have experts in the back behind the glass who can answer more complicated questions. We'll take some on air, but feel free to keep them coming right away, early and often. If we don't get to them, we have a record and we'll make sure that you get followed up with after the fact. So take it away, guys. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi guys, Ben Feldman, second year full-time MBA, originally from Hartford, Connecticut, and I spent 7 years as a U.S. Army officer. So I'll be working full-time at Citigroup here in Atlanta after graduation.
Great, thanks Ben. And I'm Tom Clark. I'm a second year as well. I'm co-president of the Veterans Club here. My last duty station, I was in the Army. I was in Savannah, Georgia. Before that in Germany. I was an intel officer. This summer I interned with BCG in their Atlanta office. That's a consulting firm. And I'll be returning to them next year full-time.
Congratulations to both of you on your full-time job offers. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. It's one of the hallmarks here of our program is our career services department. But let's get right into it and talk a little bit about what it means to be a student here and how we are unique. There is, of course, the academic experience. You don't come to school just to be in clubs and get to know folks, although that's a great side effect and something that we're really proud of in our community. But guys, talk a little bit about the first experience when you're here to get into those core classes and what it's like to go through those, because at Goizueta, you take the core in your first semester. And if you're in the one-year program, you take a lot of your core in the summer and early so you can get into electives. Talk about how difficult that was or how advantageous that was.
Sure, yeah. So the core is pretty intense. For us full-time MBAs, it was our entire first semester was the core. So every class is selected for you. So your whole schedule is basically managed for you. You're coming in early in the morning, starting your classes around 8:30, and you're usually there, probably until about 6, 7 at night, maybe even later. And that's a mix of classes and your group work. So during the core, you're assigned a group, not only a section of about 60 other students, but also a small group you're in as well. And you do everything with that group, team projects, homework, all study for exams. And so it's a really intense experience and one that I loved. It was very challenging, and that's really what I was looking for when I was selecting an MBA program. I knew I wanted to be pushed outside my comfort zone academically, and the core is I just found very challenging. So economics, statistics, finance, management practice, some really intense courses and a lot of coursework, but the group experience really makes it worthwhile, and you really kind of rely on your group mates and just a very team-oriented, challenging, intense experience.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So one thing I would piggyback on that and just say that the core being all kind of put into that first part of the semester, to me, I really felt like it prepared me well for interviews. Maybe particularly coming from the military, I thought, this is a new language. I'm meeting and talking about new problems that people are facing. And the fact that I had gone through basically a 101 course on all the different major subjects of business made me feel, well prepared for those interviews. And then really the next step from that is that in the internships, that we all successfully got, I felt like the core really helped prepare me for any situation. So. You don't know exactly what's going to happen in your internship. You don't know what's going to be asked of you. And that certainly happened to me. But I did feel that in those situations I had enough rounded, different experiences, business knowledge that I could take the problem, break it down, and effectively solve it. And I think a lot of that I would attribute to kind of that diversity that we get in the core experience.
Great point. In the 2-year program, internships are vital in that summer in between year 1 and year 2, and we're proud to say at Goizueta we have a great long-running rate of 100% internship. Everyone goes out there and gets a chance to really apply this right away, and then in your case, you make a good impression and things move on. We have our first question, and I think it'd be a good one for you to answer in the sense of about the Veterans Club and how it comes together. Is there a ratio between those who are in the program who served as officers versus enlisted men and women, and how does that kind of break down, even in branches of service? How would you describe that mix?
Yep. So I don't have the numbers in front of me. In general, it is definitely more officer heavy, but I would say that every enlisted that's been a part of the program is fully embraced equally. There's not, in the military, there does kind of tend to be those different tiers, people grouping, the people you'll hang out with, but not in the program. I can actually say I happened to be in a core group with another veteran. I was an officer, he was enlisted in the Navy. So from the military sense, those are two entirely different worlds. But we certainly had things in common that a lot of other people in the program didn't have. And we're really strong friends now. We try our best to be on the same groups now because we work so well together. So maybe that's not necessarily the numbers or the ratios, but kind of the feeling is that we're all veterans here together.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Tom. Once you get here and you step on campus, those lines between officer and enlisted are completely blurred, and I'm not sure if we always even remember who was an officer, who was enlisted. We probably remember if we're out having a beer together and we sort of joke and give each other a hard time about it. But yeah, it's really, once you're here, it's we're just all veterans, and it's one thing I love about it.
Let's talk a little bit more about that community in the sense our class sizes here are small, and the entire class is small. You'll get to know everyone in your cohort, and I can speak from experience of folks who work here now who are alumni from 10, 15 years ago. They still are very close with their classmates and talk all the time. What did that mean for each of you when you were coming in and learning a new language? I'm sure had some not doubts, but a little apprehensiveness of how quickly things were going to change and you could really adapt to this business environment. How big was that community?
Yeah. So I definitely have some comments on that. And the first one for me is, in part of my selection process for a school, is I wanted to make sure, I knew I had a kind of a long road to transition into the business world. And so I wanted to be somewhere where I knew I'd get the right level of attention, so kind of that intimate environment, which certainly the school does have. You get that feeling from your professors. They know you by your name. They take time out of their day for you. And the other thing I would say is that you get to know all your classmates. You certainly get very close to the people in your core group, the people in your section of 60 or so. You'll get close to them, but you'll know everyone in your class. And just me personally, I knew that I had just as much to learn in a classroom from a book or a professor as I did from those other classmates that are coming from different walks of life. I realized that they all had professional experience, very different than my own, that I could learn from.
Yeah, and just to add to what Tom said, and just thinking about community in my core group that I had back for a semester, one guy that always jumps to mind for me is another student named Brian Hong. So Brian is from Korea, and he works for LG, and so he's very high up in the LG corporation. I think he works on the staff for the CEO, and just being in a group with Brian every day, seeing how he sort of attack problems, manage through situations, his thought process, not only from his professional experience, but from his cultural experiences, and and I had a Japanese student, similar, pretty high up in the Japanese automotive industry in my group, and all those kinds of ways of working and ideas, and bring us all together to attack a problem or a group project is just phenomenal. So some things maybe I wasn't great at, one of those guys probably were pretty good at, and vice versa. And we all just sort of relied on each other. And I tell you, that group experience in the Corps is really something I'll always remember.
Mm-hmm. It's like you guys knew what's on these slides, because you just gave a great segue into this slide talking about global opportunities. Yeah. And I believe that some folks, in really looking at any graduate program, that something you may take for granted is the fact of what you learn from your classmates. You may immediately think of, where am I going to go on a trip, or where can I study abroad? And that's very, very important. But I can speak from my own work experience that working with someone from another country can be totally enlightening. But let's go through some of these global opportunities, and we'll start on the left side of the table now. What did you take part in, and what would you want to impart on some of the folks on the chat?
Sure. Well, so full disclosure, I'm married. My wife works here in Atlanta.
Full disclosure,
so,
yeah, that's good. We got to give her the
so-
shout out. Hey, honey, yeah.
Well, the reason I say that is so last year it wasn't it wasn't probably the right time or right decision for me to go to Hong Kong or go on one of what we call the MSMs, the international trips. Something I'd like to do with my wife here pretty soon, probably after graduation. Speaking of this guy, Brian Hong, we're going to try and plan a trip to Korea and go see some of our friends from Japan, Korea. So I didn't do the MSMs. I will say that a lot of our classmates did go, and they just had a phenomenal time. And they come back with pictures and stories, and South America, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and it just really sounds like a phenomenal experience. So.
So I'll talk about some of the different experiences that we can have. So last year I did Washington campus, which is in DC, and it's really just all about the intersection of business and politics. Really interesting subjects and really great access. So it's a program that you can get into through the school. Another one that's coming up very soon for me, we're still in our finals here, but those will be over soon, and then we'll be moved on to next semester. I'm really excited. I'm doing a class in Chile at the beginning of next semester. It's going to be global pricing, and I'm just really excited to have that experience. It's a short course, kind of kick off the semester for me. And then really the third one that's coming up for me is we have an Advanced Leadership Academy, and that is culminates basically, does a series of leadership trainings and culminates in a sailing exercise in the British Virgin Islands, where you take a bunch of people that don't know how to sail, tell them they have to get from A to B, 5 days on the water, not touching land. And so to me, it sounds like a pretty exciting experience to kind of be thrown into that environment as well.
So everybody jockeying now to get on the team of your colleague, your naval colleague, or is he going to be taking part in that trip? Or are they allowed to take part in that trip?
So they actually want people that have no experience at all to kind of add to that learning experience.
That's interesting. So we do have some questions coming in, and please do continue to provide those to us. The question is, how would the panelists find their military experiences relevant to consulting, one route in particular, government and military consulting, or to a more personal concern, the preparation for entrepreneurial endeavors among their classmates?
Yep. So I can definitely take the consulting one. So to me, this is actually something that I've only really realized in retrospect. So having gone through recruiting and internship, and now joining full time and watching people go through the process of getting ready for consulting interviews, which are, it's a pretty heavy lift to get in the door. Really what I see is that the difference between the people that I'm helping get ready on the military side and people coming from more traditional professional experiences is that the military certainly does struggle with knowing the language, having the experience of having done it themselves in the business environment. But where they just excel is the confidence, and when they feel like they're on the right track to driving to a solution, kind of winning or cracking the case, that they are confident and that they are present themselves well, and that really comes across in the interview setting. And so, again, I wouldn't say that on the front side I really realized that, but certainly now that I'm kind of helping people practice their interview skills is something that I've seen come across.
Yeah, and I would just add to what Tom said. I think a few key attributes that we bring and help make us successful here. One is our ability to, no matter what's due, what time it is, what needs to happen, we are used to making it happen. So if we need to stay late, if we need to be the latest one, working on something for the group, or we need to be the earliest one on campus, we don't have issues doing that, because that's sort of how we were raised professionally in the military before this. And it seems to be true of almost every veteran. Is just, that's how we're used to operating. And I think our classmates really do take notice of that. And I'd also just say our initiative as well, just being, hey, if I need to be the guy to take the lion's share of this project, let me do it, and sort of take the load off this next guy or girl, who may have something else going on in another class. It's really kind of holding them back. So really used to going above and beyond if needed for the group. And finally, just our ability to stand and deliver. Like Tom talked about the confidence, a lot of us are very comfortable. We've been in those rooms, maybe, in that tent deployed where you had to stand up in front of a superior officer, group of superior officers, and sort of sell your plan. And those were intimidating situations. They can be, and I think those sort of experiences have really prepared us for all the times here at school where we are getting up or even in an interview, getting up and really delivering, selling ourselves or selling our plan or our project.
That's a great point, Ben, and I think we take it to a little bit of a different level here at Goizueta in terms of, one, our veterans, of course, are natural leaders that come in and have a great impact on the program, but our leader of the leadership program is actually a retired Lieutenant General, Ken Keene, who led the relief effort on the island of Haiti after the earthquake there several years ago, and is just an all-around interesting man. What's it like seeing some elements of the military and the leadership program that you see that Ken Keene provides, and do you appreciate that a little more, or do you think that it is a chance for veterans to really step in and do a little bit more deep dive because they've had that experience? Ben, go ahead, and then Tom, I'd love to get your take.
Yeah, I've loved it. I've absolutely loved having General Keene here, and he's first of all, his record, his military experience really speaks for himself, like you were saying, Jay, Mike, and what he did in Haiti and everything. But what's great is that he'll come in as part of our leadership requirement in that class. He'll come and do a presentation and sort of speak to the class about his experiences and sort of how they apply to the business world. And it has just been really a pleasure to listen to him, hear his experiences, but see our classmates sort of, just react to what he's done and what he's been through. And also, I think they really do take a lot from his experiences and maybe how they can sort of translate to, to business leadership. So it's been phenomenal. And I'll give it to you, Tom. But
yeah, absolutely. So one of the more tactical pieces of kind of the leadership training that he's bringing is the after-action review process. So for people coming out of the military, that's very standard. Any operation, you want to know what you did well, what you didn't do so well, so that next time you're even better. And maybe those thoughts are out there in the business world, but certainly not in the rigorous way that you just conduct these on a regular basis after any action. So in the school, it's very different. It's usually a presentation or a paper or something like that, some deliverable in the classroom. But he's taken that and really taught students that are not familiar with the military or the after-action review process how to effectively use that as a tool to get better as a group. And I think that from the military, having seen it on the other side, it's interesting to see it in this new environment. But really, it just speaks to the point that some of the leadership and organizational skills from the military do have application in the professional world. So.
Yeah, and I would just add one more thing, Jay, Mike. With General Keene, I think some of the veterans, there could be times in class or whenever maybe we're not sure, we want to volunteer a story that we may have from a deployment or something that has some relevance to what we're talking about in class. But sometimes maybe you're a little unsure, can my classmates kind of relate to what I'm talking about here? But having General Keene here at the school and having him present his experiences to some of our different classes has just been phenomenal. And sometimes he'll look at one of us and say, Ben, Tom, do you remember going through something like this in the Army? And I love it because it really kind of lets us open up a little bit and feel good about sharing our experiences with our classmates. And our classmates just seem to absolutely really enjoy hearing sort of what we've gone through and our leadership experiences from our past.
Yeah, it's a great point to make too. I think when you're choosing any sort of next step in life, you want to be able to have influence and impact. And I think you're allowed to do that here because of the after-action review edition, and doing that immediately and being used to going through something like that. And it's just a fun guy to have around. I mean, you'll get the emails from him at the bottom. You're certainly reminded that Rangers lead the way on every email that he sends to you. And then hopefully you guys can go out with him and ask for see his coin, and you get to, drink for free,
right,
correct?
Yeah,
is that how it goes?
Yeah, that's how it works. Yep.
That's what I thought it was. Well, let's talk a little bit about the community. And we've touched on this just a little bit, but I know each of you, Ben and Tom, want to share something specific about the community of veterans here and the community at Goizueta and how they fit together.
Absolutely. So I think on your slides there you're seeing some of the priorities that are set for the club. I'm personally very proud of that, having a hand in that. And then you also see a few examples of the events that we've done. But what I want to speak to, particularly to the veteran, is the veteran network. And really, for me, it was a very important part of making the transition, getting an internship, networking around a firm. So you're going to be interested in a lot of companies where you don't know anyone there. And certainly the veteran network is something that you can leverage to have a call with someone that you may have never met before, but you have something in common with. And I think that's very powerful. And certainly that's something that we here leverage very heavily. We stay in touch. We have our alumni list. We keep track of where they are, what their positions are. And so that's something that we can leverage. And then it's also, you have a group of people within wherever that, that new job, that firm, the internship is, you have a group of people that are going to help you out. And so this is really a group of people that kind of are willing to pay it forward and be engaged and understand where you're coming from. And it's very powerful. And I think before coming to business school, I underestimated how influential that can be. But now certainly it's not, and something that I'm going to continue to give back to even after I leave the school.
Yeah, and we have some phenomenal events here that really kind of illustrate how strong our community is for veterans. So the one thing I'd mention is our veterans recruiting networking dinner that happens in the fall, usually late September timeframe. And it's just great. It's an event, usually happens on a Thursday night, and it's just veterans, Goizueta veterans, and recruiters and business leaders from around Atlanta and really the Southeast in this one room together for a night. So a few cocktails and some dinner, and it's just great. And we have some friends that have gotten their job offers from that night and their internship offers leading from their first experience or that interaction from that night. So it's just a phenomenal event. It's great and really shows how much the school, Emory, cares about its veterans, put on a dinner like that. And this Friday night, we're going to a homeless veteran shelter. We're going to be cooking dinner for a bunch of homeless vets. And we do happy hours a lot. We do a lot of social stuff, include our wives. A lot of us are married. And so we really run the gamut from professional networking to community service to just going out and having fun and enjoying Atlanta. And that's really what I love about our vets group here.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I want to make sure everyone understands it's not necessarily a silo either in terms of, okay, we're going to do this for veterans and this for whatever. Our community is so small and tight-knit in certain ways that really is a great corporate event. That's something where a lot of folks in the school will come out. I've attended and had pleasure of having dinner with a former naval fighter pilot and getting to know what happened in his life post-Navy and going into career. And then also bringing in alumni from other industries. Shane Cooper, an alumna who is COO at Lockheed Martin, spoke at this last dinner. She's actually also recently appointed to the Emory Trustee Executive Committee, so a very powerful person in Atlanta business scene, and talking about how it is so great to hire veterans, but especially for a firm like Lockheed Martin, which has military contracts, et cetera. But you talk about Atlanta. I think for those of you out there who've traveled, and many of you I know have traveled extensively, maybe Atlanta has only been a connection in an airport on a way to a deployment or to a new duty station, but talk a little bit about what this city means to you all and why it's important as part of your education. And I'll toss it up first. I see the notes here. Ben, you want to talk about food? So should we leave that? To the end, or do you want to go ahead and talk about it now?
Yeah, really. What I mean by that is, my wife and I, we'd been to Atlanta, a couple times in the past, but once we got here and we started to really experience the city and go out with some other couples and, my core group and their wives and just other people from school, it seemed like there was a new restaurant or a new bar, somewhere to go check out every weekend. And, so it's representative of the type of dynamic growing city Atlanta is and the culture here. So we knew, sure you guys too, we've all lived in some desolate places and some places where it was hard to go find somewhere fun to go eat maybe on a Friday night. But so for me, and that's why Atlanta just been phenomenal, is just the culture, everything that surrounds it there. But we've actually really had a blast in the city and decided to stay here and call Atlanta home.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So I'd piggyback off that. So I grew up moving around a lot. My father was in energy, so we moved every 3 years, and then my career in the military, moving around, living abroad. So it was very hard for me to define where home is. And now when people ask me, I'm just right away, just Atlanta is home. I'm doing my best to set down roots here, and definitely it's where we want to be. But I would say if I had to say what's the one thing that is really really awesome, I really can't understate how awesome having an airport that has direct connections everywhere. So just from my personal experience, that's important for personal travel. I'm just a person, and my wife is too, that when we have some time, we want to go to a foreign place and experience a different culture. Mm-hmm. And so that's flying to Chile, Peru, Canada. Those are all direct flights, so you're not connecting. It makes it easier to do. It's cheaper too. But then maybe really importantly, anyone that's considering consulting, really look heavily at how good is the airport, because you will be there frequently. And so that was my experience this summer. Just having that great airport there was direct to the client site and was really convenient to get in and out of. So it kind of sounds mundane, but really because it's involved in anyone's professional life so frequently, or personal travel, it really makes things much more realistic.
There's been many times where I've gotten home to Atlanta in bad weather or something, and I see all those poor folks just waiting on their connection or missing their connection, and I have to say, I'm glad I'm home. I don't have to connect through here or anything. And vacationing, you're absolutely right, direct flights to the Caribbean, and it really is a great selling point. But also the companies. You should be seeing a list of the companies here, and I think a lot of times outside of Coke and Home Depot, maybe people forget all these huge Fortune 500 companies that are based here and pretty much all have some sort of presence here, especially the Fortune top 50 or Fortune 100. More moving here every day. Unfortunately, General Electric decided not to move their headquarters here, but Atlanta was a finalist. You have Porsche and other car companies moving their North American headquarters here. So Atlanta's by no means done either with how it is growing as a city. So one question here, and please do, we got about 5 minutes left or so on our scheduled time. Please add them in as we get them, and thank you guys both for your great job. First question, how many folks have you studied with who come from the defense contracting world, and is knowledge of the business side of defense provided useful? That's an interesting question. I mean, is there folks who maybe have come from the business side of the military that now you're getting to meet and work with?
So I know some so we're second years, but I do know some first years that come from that background. And also a lot of classmates will come from government. So not necessarily military, but they certainly have a pretty good frame of reference for what it's like to be a part of a very big organization. So certainly people that have that kind of similar coming from the government background, some contractors. I can't really speak. I don't know anyone that well personally that was a contractor.
Yeah, I don't either. But yeah, you're right. Like Tom said, and people in government in the past. But
well, and the government connection is also very big. You talk about Washington campus. Professor J.B. Kurish is actually leads the board for Washington campus. So you actually have a leader in charge of that curriculum and making sure that it is a proper alignment between business and government. He's here. His office is down the hall. And then he also happens to be one of the leaders for the sailing trip as well. So there is a very heavy connection here to Washington. Lots of alumni events in Washington. It's one of the key cities on the East Coast, if you will, that we have a large presence. So that is something not to take lightly. Question here for you, Tom. How does the Atlanta business community enhance your educational experience? Specifically, does the Vets Club make an effort to take advantage of the business community and work with them?
Yep, absolutely. So Ben mentioned it briefly, but the Vet Connect dinner specifically, the Vets Club organizes that, puts it on with a lot of support from the school. But what's going on at that event is we're bringing in alumni, our students are there, our veteran students are there, leaders from the faculty are there, but then representatives, recruiting representatives, and veterans from companies around Atlanta are coming to that dinner. We're mixing everyone together at the tables, and we're having a discussion about how can veterans contribute, where is their leadership value, how do they transition into the business world. And it's a really powerful event, not just there's obviously benefits on the recruiting side, but it's also, for me this year, it was just really powerful to see the conversations that were happening around these tables about being a veteran, having that experience of service, and then talking to people about the business world and how we as veterans can really add value in those environments, and to hear different experiences. I would say that's very powerful and just a concrete example of how we're bringing in Atlanta companies specifically through the Veterans Club.
One last call for questions, but I will end with one of my own. And Ben, I'm going to use some of your words against you. It's time to stand and deliver.
Yeah, sure.
You have to pitch someone, tell someone the value of Goizueta in just a few sentences. What do you tell them?
Start with close-knit community. Really, if you want a program where you want to know your professors, you want to really know your classmates, and you want those sort of relationships in class to be long-term friendships. That's absolutely what it's been for me. So I would just have to say that close-knit kind of team-oriented community I've loved.
Sounds a lot like you have in the military.
Yeah,
It's something that everyone can be familiar
Yep.
with. Tom?
For me, I think that the flexibility and customizability of the program. So right now, this semester, I'm taking 2 directed studies. That's me and a few other students that are working with a professor on a very specific topic that we came up with, found interesting, and wanted to learn more about. And just that access, that level of the amount of time that professors are going to give you to learn what you want to learn and get ready for the career you want. I think that is, that's the selling point right there.
Thank you both so much for taking time, and thank you for your service in particular and what you're going to be doing for the business world soon. You should have the slide up that tells you how you can get in touch with us. Many of you already have, and thank you for that. And please do continue to reach out with any questions you may have. This chat will be available archived soon, and again, all these questions we'll be able to follow up with afterwards if we have not. And one more plug, I'm sure you've all perused our website up and down, back and forth. Please continue to do that, but also check out emorybusiness.com for a lot of the news stories and other features about what's going on around the school so you can really get to know our community. Again, I'm J. Michael Moore for our panelists and for the folks in the back. Thanks for watching.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.